Minority Safepak was the fifth successful European Citizens Initiative in EU history. It secured 1,123,422 statements of support from EU citizens, and it passed the set signature threshold in 11 EU member states. Now, the aim of Minority Safepak was to ensure the adoption of a package of 9 legislative proposals that hope to protect cultural and linguistic diversity in the European Union. And doing so, the aim was to lay the foundations of an EU minority rights protection framework that could safeguard the usage of regional minority languages. Now, the choice of why Minority Safepak opted to utilize the European Citizens Initiative is due to the fact that there are 50 million EU citizens who belong to an autochthonous national or linguistic minority within the European Union. And these citizens are numerically minorities within their respective member states. So in order to unite their efforts, they decided to come together and launch a European Citizens Initiative. Now, the ECI, the European Citizens Initiative, is a tool of participatory democracy. So it was clear from the start that this would only raise awareness of their concerns and place the plight of these citizens onto the agenda. And it allows citizens to propose legislative acts, but it was clear that there's a difference between proposing them and actually getting them adopted. However, this was seen as the best possible avenue to do so at the time. So far, 76 European Citizens Initiatives have been launched. And out of those 76 European Citizens Initiatives, 6 to this date in time have been able to satisfy the requirements to collect 1 million statements of support, but also to pass the threshold in 7 EU member states. And out of those 6, only 1 has resulted so far in legislative action. So there are other tools of participatory democracy. For example, the European Parliament has a petition system through which you can raise awareness of a concern, but to propose legislative action and to ask for legislative change, then you must turn to the European Citizens Initiative system. The mobilization strategy of Minority Safepak was to run a decentralized pan-European campaign coordinated by an umbrella organization at the center of it, which in this case was FUAN, the Federal Union of European Nationalities. And I emphasize the point that this was a decentralized campaign. So the best way to mobilize citizens for a cause that reaches across boundaries, across EU member states, across the continent, is to ensure that your strategic partners on the ground who speak the language, who understand the concerns, who feel how the topic might resonate with citizens on the ground, have the greatest possible mobilization network behind them. And you turn to them through a decentralized campaign to ensure that they are able to mobilize citizens locally. So that was our mobilization strategy. And the fact that we managed to pass the set signature threshold in 11 member states shows that because we identify strategic allies on the ground in 11 member states who were able to successfully mobilize citizens on the ground, this was an effective strategy. The main lesson for Minority Safepak from the perspective of leading an advocacy campaign is that you need to be multilingual. You need to assemble a campaign team that is able to fully grasp the fact that within the European Union, there are 24 official languages. Beyond this, there are 60 regional or minority languages, and you can utilize that to speak directly to citizens in their language, literally. So if you have a strategic partner on the ground, which is able to mobilize, give them the single possible greatest extent of autonomy so that they are able to mobilize in a way that their messaging fits the narrative, they're able to come up with their own talking points, but of course, at the same time, make sure that that autonomy comes with set rules so that there is agreement that the messaging, the actions are, of course, coordinated with the campaign center, and that you make sure that all of the talking points fit the narrative of the campaign at the pan-European level. So when it comes to young people, I would say the key issue that you have to focus on when it comes to mobilizing young people is intergenerationality. That means that your generation might use completely different platforms compared to the generation above it or the generation below it. Essentially, when it comes to a campaign, you need to understand very clearly what is the social media platform that is popular among young people in that particular context. Which browser do they use in order to target them through that, if they use browsers at all? Which settlements do they inhabit when you're thinking of targeted ads? And you have to assemble all of these facts and make sure that every time you're targeting a select group, whether it's young people, whether it's senior citizens, whether it's veterans, it always comes with certain facts that you have to figure out. And you have to make sure that your campaign is fact-based and that your targeting is very precise. When it comes to campaign momentum, I would say that you need to approach it from a building blocks approach. So start with smaller building blocks. Ask citizens on the ground to give you endorsements. That can be videos of citizens saying why they support it. That can be pictures of citizens saying that they support it with a quote from them. And then using that, approach those to whom these citizens matter. At the local level, these could be your municipality or regional representatives, whether that's councillors or mayors. And once they have provided you with their endorsements, then you can move on to the country level and you can approach parliamentarians and ask them to support it on the basis that citizens on the ground and local representatives such as mayors from their political party, for instance, already support it. And building on that, you reach to the country level where you are able to point to a sufficient amount of representatives from a particular party to show to an entire party that there is vast support locally across regions for that initiative. And then hopefully that will lead to a countrywide network joining your campaign. And building on that, as you come to the European level, you're able to point to an entire countrywide network behind it. We're able to say, citizens in your country support it. You have mayors and regional representatives who support it. The MPs from your party in your country's parliament support it. Your party stands behind it. So when you approach a member of European Parliament or a European Commissioner, or if you approach a government in the Council of the European Union, you're able to point to these building blocks that you've built all the way up until you've reached the head of the staircase at the top at the EU institutions. As you build these building blocks, at the end, you always are able to build momentum on this basis, to gain more and more endorsements on that basis. And as you see more and more endorsements coming in, the easier it becomes to mobilize further people. So the Minority Safepak initiative was an old school campaign in the sense that it relied primarily on door-to-door campaigning, on collection stands, on canvassing, and on very well embedded strategic allies based in regions, based in the countries that we could turn to, who already had their well-developed networks, comprising primarily citizens belonging to autochthonous, indigenous, national, or linguistic minorities. As we move forward, campaigns are going to rely more and more on big data, on gathering data from prospective supporters, involving them, and automizing those processes. Use these tools, but keep in mind that you have to rely on authenticity. You have to make those emotional connections. You have to genuinely care for the concerns of the citizens that you're approaching. And you have to bring in that feedback. So you can use these tools to augment your approach, but I think the physical sphere, emotional sphere, and the human-centered sphere cannot be substituted by these tools. if you consider that according to the Democracy on the Move Eurobarometer, 48% of EU citizens say their voice counts in the European Union, then 48% is very low. And as a result of that, each and every single time a European Citizens Initiative is launched, each and every single time a citizen is engaged in this deliberative, participatory democracy process at the EU level, that's an additional citizen who feels that their voice counts in the EU institutions. So on the other hand, the institutions need to respect the European Citizens Initiative. They need to ensure that citizens' concerns are properly addressed. And they need to make sure the follow-up to such requests is substantive and that there is a debate at the highest levels, but there is also action which addresses the concerns of citizens. And I would encourage the participants of this course to consider that they themselves have the ability and the possibility to call for legislative change. So please do identify a tool of participatory democracy that best suits your purpose. And please do launch that initiative to ensure that your voice is heard.